I'll have to beg program director to indulge me in giving me a few more extra minutes. Thank you so much. So we know what the topic is, the status and prestige of women in Vedic literature and reflection on today's society. So I'm going to start off with examining what is Vedic literature. Well, it's a set of texts which contain the Vedas, the Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishads, and the Vedanga. And those texts discuss the hymns, philosophy, rituals, sacrifices, and spiritual practices of that time. And to this, I'm going to link the Vedic periods. So we're going to be looking at the Vedic age because the Vedas and all these texts come from that Vedic literature of that age. And the Vedic age can be divided into two parts. Early or Rig Vedic age, which was between 1500 and 1000 BCE, and the later or Epic age, which was between 1000 to approximately 600 BCE. Then I'm going to just touch on the medieval age, that's between 500 to 1000 CE, the Christian era, just to see what changes took place, and then reflect on today's society, what's required in the topic. So the next thing is men and women are created differently. So why the focus on women? There are many reasons for this. Women were considered superior to men during the Vedic age, and they occupied first place in many matters. The Vedas are often referred to in the feminine, for instance, Srimati Rig Veda Samhita. Presentation. Whilst the Gayatri Mantra, the holiest prayer of Hindus in the Vedas, is symbolically referred to as Devi in classical Hinduism. In later periods, the Vedic concept gave rise to the male-female divine pair, such as Radha Krishna, Sita Ram, Uma Umesh, Lakshmi Narayan, in which the female is usually addressed first. The feminine forms of the popular Hindu goddesses and the philosophical concept of Nari Shakti, the principle of female energy, was also a product of this Vedic age. But one needs to be cautious here, and one must bear in mind that this is in the Vedic age and that the Arya Samaj acknowledges and accepts that God has no form, that God is formless. Okay. So another reason why we're focusing on women, women make many sacrifices throughout their lives. And the one who sacrifices anything for others ought to be respected and honored. Hinduism recognizes both the masculine and feminine attributes of divinity. Where the feminine is not honored, one cannot claim to know God in its entirety. In her is found all the highest qualities that distinguish us from other creatures, such as patience, tolerance, compassion, tenderness, forgiveness, sympathy, and the like. And if the entire universe is filled with wonder and beauty, then a woman is that beauty personified. She is one woman who fills multiple roles. One woman, countless roles. As mother, she is the core of family life. As creator, she produces offsprings and sustains the human race. As educator and protector, she is the wind beneath the wings of her children, constantly striving to nurture and instill good values and morals in them so that they may become honest and compassionate human beings. And the saying, "The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world," aptly describes her because she inspires her offspring to do their best and achieve great heights by becoming leaders. As daughter, sister, wife, daughter-in-law, aunt, and niece, She's the mentor and role model in her extended family. And as career woman, she has shown great intelligence, skill, and resilience, and has excelled in every field of endeavor and is on par with men. On the one hand, one cannot imagine creation without a woman, whilst on the other, a happy and well-run family or society cannot survive without her. And in jest, one cannot spell the word hero without her. Now, if we look at the early Rig Vedic age, that's between 1500 to 1000 BCE, this may be called the golden age of womanhood in India, because during this time, women received the highest respect, equality, dignity, had choices, and they enjoyed a high status and great prestige in society. Pandit Nehru, the first Prime Minister of independent India, had this to say: "The status of women depicts the social, economic, and mental condition of a nation." So if the status of women is low, you can understand the mental condition of that nation. No other culture has given women a higher status than the Vedic culture. The writings of the Vedic era suggest that women were accorded full status in society as full and equal citizens. They shared an equal standing with the menfolk. Women could attend popular assemblies, and Vedic texts contain references to women publicly attending festivals, dances, and feasts. Women were considered superior to men. And in the Manusmriti 11.145, it is said that the father is 10 times greater than the teacher. But more significantly, the mother is 100 times greater than the father. Respect and prestige. Women were accorded respect by all during this age. Sage Manu has said, "Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha." Where women are respected, there dwell men of divine quality. So during this period, women were treated with honor, dignity, respect, and prestige. Going on to equality, women were treated equal to men. The Vedas advocate gender equality and do not encourage gender bias in any form in relation to a woman. In every field, a woman played an equal role with men. And in all religious ceremonies, the wife participated together with her husband. In education, the question of whether women had the freedom to educate themselves did not arise, simply because education for women was considered important. Young girls had equal right to education. They could be educated either by means of the brahmacharya route or the path of Upanayan sanskars. Women had a choice to study the scriptures or be householders. If women so desired, they could undergo the Upanayan sanskar, which is the sacred thread ceremony, a sacrament to pursue Vedic studies. On marriage, in this period, there was the custom of Swayamvara, where a girl, usually from the upper echelons of society, had the freedom to choose her husband from among eligible bachelors invited to her house for the occasion. After marriage, the girl became a grihini, wife, and was considered ardhangini, or one half of her husband, which we will consider the better half. The Rig Veda says, "The home has verily its foundation in the wife." A woman was Samrajni, that is the queen or mistress of the household, and she had an equal share with the husband in the performance of all religious rites. However, women were not independent persons in the eyes of the law and had to remain under the protective care of their male relatives. So during this early Rig Vedic period, There were no child marriages. The marriageable age appears to have been after puberty, that's between 16 to 17 years. Monogamy was generally practiced. That is, one man could have one wife at a time, whilst polygamy was prevalent amongst royalty and the noble families. After the death of her husband, a woman could choose to live the life of sannyasin. There was no practice of divorce in this period, and the custom of sati did not exist. If we look at women rishis and scholars in this period, two mantras of the Rig Veda, 1.7, 179.1 and 2, are attributed to significant females in the Vedic period. There were women scholars such as Gosha, Sikata, Nivavari, Apala, Visvara, and many others. Whilst the Upanishads contain examples of women scholars and sages who were deep thinkers, skillful debaters, and renowned academics such as Gargi, Lopamudra, Gosha, and Maitreyi, who contributed to the composition of the Vedas. Women were allowed to study the scriptures and elevate themselves to the highest position as rishis. The Rig Veda mentions about 30 women rishis. Although they were few, they contributed much to the cause of society and the Vedas. So we see that throughout the Vedic culture, women have always been given the highest level of respect and freedom, but also protection and safety. There is a saying in the Manu Smriti, which translates to, where the women are happy, there will be prosperity. And here I have quite a few quotes from the Vedas that contain certain prescriptions that empower women. The Rig Veda, I'm not going to cite the exact 10.85.46 for due to time constraints. So I will just run through them so you get an idea of them. In the Rig Veda, women should be given the lead stage for ruling the nation, in societal work, in government organizations. And women should have the same right as a son over the father's property. The Yajur Veda says, women should be valiant and participate in war. The Atharva Veda says, women should earn fame, be scholars, be illuminating, be prosperous and wealthy, be intelligent and knowledgeable, and take part in legislative chambers, be protector of family and society, be provider of wealth and food, be provider of prosperity, and ride on chariots. So they were allowed to do these things, and they had a choice to do it, and they had the freedom to do it. And in doing it, they were empowered in this way. Then we move on to the later or epic Vedic age, which is from 1000 to 600 BCE. During the later or epic Vedic age, the position and condition of women deteriorated. Aitharya Brahmana says that the daughter is the source of misery, but the son is protector of the family. Maitrayani Samhita says that there are three evils: liquor, dice, and woman. According to Shatapatha Brahmana, a woman was not to eat out and was to eat only after the husband had finished eating. And as per Brahmana literature, a man could get the same punishment for killing his wife as for killing a Shudra. Women were deprived of the Upanayana Sanskar in this period, and they could not attend the tribal council or assembly. Married women in the upper class had to tolerate the presence of rival wives, and the custom of sati was being practiced. After the age of 18, remarriage of a widow was allowed, but under certain conditions. For instance, she could marry the brother of a deceased husband. Then we move on to the, during this period, prostitutes or devadasis were a part of this later Vedic period. The The girls were married to God in a temple and expected to spend the rest of their lives serving men in the society. They were allowed to make a living, but their lives were regulated by a code of conduct. And despite the foregoing, the opportunity for education was not completely denied in this period. For instance, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is a high-level dialogue between Yajnavalkya and Gargi that proves that women were highly educated. Now I move on to the medieval age. So with the passage of time, the position and condition of women worsened and became compromised in the Middle Ages. Through the influence of Mughal conquerors, the parda was introduced. The custom of sati was still being practiced, and women no longer were considered first. They were now considered as secondary, just good for domestic chores and bearing children. Child marriage became common. Birth of the daughter was considered inauspicious, whilst that of the son was an occasion for celebration. Polygamy was common amongst the noble class. Divorce was uncommon amongst Hindus, but permitted for Muslims. Due to marriage of young women to older men, there were many widows in society. Women in the Mughal period were not allowed to remarry. So over time, the high level of respect, freedom, protection, and safety, as well as the great status and prestige women enjoyed during the Vedic age, was slowly but surely being eroded, and women were being subjected to unequal treatment. Now we move on to today's society. Looking at the current society, I find that there are all types of people. Some who follow the path of righteousness, some who do meditation and spiritualism, and others who don't, but tend to yield to materialism and the pleasures of the senses. The attitude and mindset of the latter group is influenced by the outside material world, often leaving them very restless and dissatisfied. Furthermore, in the current society, man is being judged by his material progress and ranked accordingly on society's status ladder. Man is constantly chasing his desires for possessions and material success, which results in him becoming highly strung, stressed, and impatient. Such a man, when frustrated with life, then turns to violence, which he inflicts on those around him, his wife and children. To exacerbate the situation, there are some cultures in rural communities with a patriarchal mindset, where the women are illiterate, unemployed, and subservient. These women are then taken advantage of and are treated by their menfolk and families with disrespect, inequality, as they have no respect, as the families have no respect for and disregard human rights. In such a toxic environment, women are given no status and prestige and have to endure all kinds of violence committed against them. With the escalating violence, governments in such countries have attempted to manage the situation to prevent violence against women. But most democratic governments have enacted a Bill of Rights enshrined into their constitutions and have followed this with the enactment of a plethora of protective legislation and creation of institutions to protect and enforce those rights. But this has not yielded much success, and some of the underlying causes for this unsuccessful attempts are government paying lip service or treating the issues with rhetoric, lack of funding by government to maintain the upkeep of shelters for women, difficulty in changing the perception and attitude of perpetrators towards women whom they do not respect and do not treat as equals. On the other hand, educated females employed in huge cities who are self-supporting receive a better deal, as they are respected, recognized, and treated equally, and have some degree of status and prestige as their fundamental rights are being protected. Now I would like to reflect on the current situation in two democracies, namely South Africa, a recent democracy, and India, a much older democracy. According to the 2021 General Household Survey, more than half of South Africa's population are women. South Africa has a Bill of Rights enshrined in its Constitution of 1996, in which women are entitled to equality and their human rights are protected. In the latter half of the 20th century, political and economic developments presented new opportunities and challenges for women in South Africa. During the first decade of democracy, the new government embarked on significant law reform and creation of policies and institutions to correct the ills of apartheid and protect and enforce the laws. South Africa has begun empowering women, but largely in the political arena. In 2015, in local government, of the 278 municipalities in South Africa, 106 municipalities had a female mayor. And due to ANC policy of 50% women representation in parliament, South Africa now has 46% women represented in parliament. Yet, these women have not spearheaded policy against gender-based violence. The roles of public protector and the national director of public prosecutions are occupied by females. In sports, South Africa has a national all-woman team for soccer and cricket. In 2019, President Cyril Ramaphosa disclosed that violence in South Africa was a national crisis. Every year, approximately 200,000 women report some form of violent physical attack against them to the police. South Africa has some of the highest global rates for gender-based violence, which includes rape, female homicide, and domestic abuse. The female rate of homicide is approximately 24 per 100,000 persons, which is almost 6 times the global average. In 2012, the World Health Organization reported that monthly, approximately 60,000 women and children are victims of domestic abuse in South Africa. And this is the highest reported rate globally. Another study discloses that 1 out of 5 women are victims of domestic abuse, which is the most common and widespread human rights abuses. The rate of sexual violence is amongst the highest in the world. Police statistics show that between 2019 and 2020, the rate of reported sexual offenses increased by an average of 246 incidents per day, of which 116 cases were of rape. Human Rights Watch has dubbed South Africa the rape capital of the world. Despite women having some degree of status and prestige, women still suffer prejudice and discrimination, for instance, in the workplace. Women are paid salaries which are not on par with men for the same position, and women are not the first choice for promotions, which often goes to men. Now, moving on to India. In India, progress has also been in the area of empowerment of women in senior leadership positions, which were previously reserved for males, such as in the army, navy, aviation, and politics. Some examples are India, an older democracy, had its first female Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, way back in 1966. The current president of India is from a tribal community, a tribal woman from Uparbed village in Odisha state. She is India's 15th president, the second woman to hold this prestigious office, and the youngest person to do so. How liberating and how progressive is that? In 2021, a flight with an all-woman flight crew created history when they operated the longest commercial flight for Air India from San Francisco to Bengaluru over the North Pole. The cities are at opposite ends of the world, and the direct distance between them is 13,993 kilometers, with a time zone change of almost 13.5 hours. Despite the great efforts to empower women, the enactment of a Bill of Human Rights, numerous protective legislation, and creation of institutions to manage violence and abuse, India also still faces challenges with violence against women, especially in her rural belt. India has various forms of violence, such as dowry deaths, honor killing, trafficking, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, sexual abuse, online abuse, and caste-based violence. In India, 70% of women face domestic violence annually. Women, especially in the rural belt, face acts of domestic violence at the hands of their spouses. Female feticide. McPherson estimates that 100,000 abortions are performed annually in India solely because the fetus is female. When compared to the respect, equality, high status, and prestige accorded to women in the early Vedic period, one cannot help but feel utterly ashamed and disgusted at the level to which today's society has sunk and the horrific violence that women in South Africa, India, and elsewhere have to endure. In conclusion, from Vedic literature, we glean that the status and prestige given to women in the early Vedic age was at a high level because of the respect, dignity, equality, and liberties accorded to women. Women were considered superior to men, and this was considered to be the golden age of womanhood in India. In the later Vedic age, the prestige and status of women waned and declined to some extent. And then even later, during the medieval age, the prestige and status of women worsened and their condition and position was compromised. In current times, we see that some women who are privileged have some degree of status and prestige, whilst others who are disadvantaged and are part of the patriarchal community have very little or no status or prestige and suffer violence at the hands of their partners and spouses. Despite governments' efforts to try to prevent violence against women, governments still face huge challenges and struggle to control, prevent, and combat the rising violence against women. What is then needed is a social revolution to root out such social evils against women and reinstate the respect, dignity, prestige, and equal status that women enjoyed during the early Rig Vedic period as disclosed in Vedic literature. What is also needed are true, honest, and uncorrupt leaders who are committed to removing the illiteracy, poverty, prejudice, inequality, and the concomitant scourge against women that it brings. Therefore, without the risk of being prescriptive, I would like to suggest that each one of us should assume responsibility whenever we witness abuse against women in our neighborhood, in the workplace, or in our communities by asking ourselves the question, what can I do to support women in my family, my community, my society, or my nation? And by so doing, contribute towards the much needed reform to improve the plight of women and truly liberate women everywhere. If one can do this, then one is a true Aryan or noble person. Thank you.
Thank you, Usha. That was excellent. If your technical person can stop sharing screen, then we'd be able to perhaps get going. Okay, Usha, please put your video on. Right, friends, Usha has taken us back to aeons and explained to us what the status and prestige of women as in the Vedas, described in the Vedas, was. And she's brought us to the current realities. these lectures that we have on Back to the Vedas, we're looking at how to navigate the present. And I think, Usha, you ended up with this issue of what is the position in India right now, where the Vedas actually emerged from. And you told us a lot about the harsh realities of what happens in South Africa. And I think we should open it up for some discussion now. There's some very interesting points in the chat. Pandit Jyotika Ray is saying, congratulations, Penji, such fantastic research on women. Couldn't be better. Pun on your ill health at the moment. Let's hope that you do feel better after this. Prakash Basant, our treasurer in the Arya Samaj, says thank you for the excellent presentation. Our chairperson on the Back to the Vedas committee, Prabodh, I was going to say Pandit, but I suppose it's just Prabodh Nadev Vedalankar, who says excellent talk, Ushaji, well researched. So friends, we're now opening it up for a discussion. Which has presented all the marvelous things about giving women respect, the highest status that women have. But she's also told us that in today's society, women are not respected. There is very little dignity for women. And I think we need to talk now about what can be done. How do we make the world noble? How do we make people noble? Usha, just to say, we've got a lot of people on today, mainly women. I personally think, and I'd like to hear your point of view, I think the days of having a women-only organization are gone. We need to have a debate between men and women about how women are treated.
Absolutely, Benji. We need to normalize the situation, and the sooner we do it, the better for all. We cannot have exclusivity. We've got to be inclusive.
Okay, can I ask anybody who wants to speak to please put up their hand or unmute themselves?
Okay, namaste to all of you. I just have a couple of questions, but I'll just limit it to maybe one or two. With regards to the statistics you mentioned earlier on, do you have any statistics for the abuse rate of men in this country? Okay,
no, I didn't go into that. I focused on women, being Women's Month, the topic wanting to know about the status and prestige of women. So unfortunately, I didn't do a comparison with men.
But,
okay.
I think we can safely say to Bhaiji that yes,
there may be very rare.
There definitely is violence against men, and it is much less. But I think we can also safely say that you do have a serious problem because within the gay community, there is a lot of violence also. And often it is violence, men against men, or even women against women.
Men. Yeah. But
okay,
I think the ratio may be much lower than the violence on women.
Yes, but perhaps
they're horrific.
Perhaps we should allow Bhaiji to ask all his questions.
Yes, a good question.
Yes, thank you very much for that. You see, currently I'm doing some studies and research. So just to contribute towards your program, and one of the things are that, the statistics is important at this stage for the analysis purposes, so we would like to know like what rate of men are being abused, So there are solutions to this kind of a problem. We can get there in due course, And the second question was about your Vedic, about the past during Vedic time. It's
Mhm.
another very important question, that during Vedic time, women were pure by nature. If you look at the age, that was a golden age.
Yes,
Women were more like, they were. It was not in this Kali Yuga with all the
absolutely.
fuss and all the emotions and attitudes in this age. You compare attitude in this age towards the Vedic age, they were too different. So that's another very important question that comes up, that tries to balance the equation so we can find a solution to both ages and see how we can align that up. That will also support your program.
Yes, Bhaji, I agree with you. It was a very pure time and we've slowly declined. Therefore, I pulled in a bit of the medieval era because that had a great impact on how we declined, very quickly down the slope with the Mughal invasions of India, you see, and then bringing in the all their
Yes,
customs. Their
yes,
customs.
exactly agree to what you say. But you see, at this point in time, I mean, it's two different ages we are comparing. You see,
Yes.
we're comparing the golden age to the iron age, so that
Yes.
the
Yes.
two
Therefore,
different
it's going to
ages.
be agreed.
Yeah. So
But
we'd like to find some solutions and some towards these type of questions, so where we can do a comparison for you, and we can address these issues, so that will support your programs. There are a lot of questions that are coming out and from the Vedic age to the Iron Age. So which I'm working on, and in due course I'll bring it forward. So you can work on this and see which way we can balance up society, because women are abused. Yes, agreed. In this country, it's like it's gone out of fashion, you could say. And yeah, I'm counseling here also in my area, and I have lots of women and cases where women are abused and even men are abused, but I didn't have the statistics where I can bring this up and and try and find some solution and balance up the equation. Yeah, so that's what I have to say.
Bhaji, there
Yeah,
is an organization called Men Against Abuse, and they do collect statistics. It's a national organization. I can link you to them and you probably get statistics from them.
yeah, that'll be good, so I can do an analysis of that and come up with some solution that would support your programs.
and you've come up with some excellent thoughts, Bhaiji. Maybe the Ari Samaj can follow on those topics as well and link up with you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I was in the Arya Samaj, I'm still with the Arya Samaj, So I'm actually a researcher, and I research on all these social aspects, So there are a lot of bright ideas that will come to support your program, If you have more of these programs, and if I'm invited to them, I would support your programs, and we could find some solution to women, as men, we feel very sorry for women, the way they are treated, and at the same time, you've got to balance up the equation. It's also men that has the problem, but the amount and the percentage will tell us exactly, what is going on. You see, yeah.
Okay, Bhaji, I think we can invite you to actually do an article for the Ved Jyoti, but perhaps you need to tell us which affiliate you're part of.
Well, I'm at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. I'm a researcher.
Okay.
Yeah, I just finished my PhD.
Can you perhaps put your email address in the chat, and your telephone number, and we'll get hold of you.
Yeah, I think the School of Vedic Studies has my details. If you contact them, they will give you. I think
Okay, thank you.
Usha is there, they will provide that. And, you know, so yeah, check with them and yeah, definitely I would try and what you call assist you in your mission, you know. And I
Thank
do a
you.
lot of, yeah, I do a lot of writing and all that, you know, and publication and all that. I also did some you see, I was at the Arya Samaj at one meeting where there was I think it was abuse test for women. So I did bring up some important points there, you know, but you see, in this kind of a situation, you got to balance up the things, you know, you got to balance up the equation. So women were very upset and, you know, so I didn't attend the meeting thereafter. But I was just trying to analyze what is going on, you see, and bring up these issues. So I found that they were not happy about what's going on, you know, about what I'm trying to say. But I was more trying to support the woman, you know, and try to support the abuse rate. So
Okay,
yeah,
Bharti, I think we need to move on to allowing other people to speak also.
yes, sure. Yes, sure.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, are there any other points from anybody else? Very useful points being made. I think, Usha, somebody has raised here, Deepmala Pillai has raised, and thanked you for reminding us all to be responsible for ensuring that we stand up when we see an injustice against women. I wonder if you want to expand on that, Usha, the suggestions you were making.
Well, Deepmala is from Australia. She's linked in, she's my sister, one of my sisters. Yes, I did say that whenever we see it in our environment, whether our neighborhood or our work environment or our community, don't turn a blind eye on it and say, it doesn't concern me, it's a domestic problem. What can I do? Can I support that woman in some way or the other and give her some support that strengthens her in this fight against injustice towards her? You know, we've got to jog our conscience into action. We cannot be inactive. We cannot act through omission. Just say, it's not my problem. So therefore, I have said, without being prescriptive, I don't want to prescribe because everyone knows what they can or cannot do in their circumstances, but to do something, some little thing that can contribute towards this, you know, giving the woman support or taking her to a shelter or advising her or whatever they can do will take us a long way if everyone pulls together and puts in their effort in some way or the other. Because sometimes we live very comfortable lives and forget that on the other side of the tracks, there are people who are worse off than us, who are suffering, who don't know what to do the next day or where to go. Because we are so comfortable in our comfort zones.
But there is another point that violence knows no race, no gender, no class distinction. And one of the things that actually happens is people have a culture of silence.
Yes, yes.
Because you are concerned about what society is going to say.
So maybe we can look at education as well, educating the victim, educating the perpetrator as well. Because how do you change the mindset of that perpetrator? He's got it that his woman is subservient. He is the patriarch of the family. He says, what he says goes. There's no equality there. So you've got to change his mindset. You've got to change the woman's mindset. I need to stand up for myself as well, for my children and myself. And to do that, she needs to be a strong woman and she needs to be empowered. And if she's illiterate or she's unemployed, she feels she doesn't have the legs to stand on. So there's a lot that needs to be done.
Okay.
Not not an easy way, way of solving things. It's a difficult road. Therefore, governments are struggling with it. And I can tell you, India has numerous legislation. They've tried everything. But in that rural belt, the mindset is so different that how do you change it? It's going to take time and effort. And if each one of us does something little, it will go towards contributing towards that change.
Yes. Okay, are there any other people who would like to speak, to make a contribution, to share their thinking, their comments on this? Okay, if there are no other people, I'd like to round up because we set this for an hour and we have 9 minutes left. So Ushaji, a lot of people have said thank you to you in the chat. There's a point that's made that you're empowering women so that they can stand up for what is right. Another person has said that it's a strong woman who lifts another. Despite being ill today, you rose up to deliver your talk today. It says a lot about women. And of course, again, there were many other points that said, thank you for reminding us to be responsible, to stand up for the injustices against women. I would like to now bring the...
Benji, before you do that, I just want to emphasize this slide. A strong woman stands up for herself. A stronger woman stands up for everyone else. So that's what we need to do. We need to be stronger women.
Okay, thank you for that last word on the point. And what I would like to do is now just, besides thanking you for coming through, I just want to check, Pandit Judy, do you want to say something?
Yes, Benji, I see Pandit Aarti Shanan's hand was up. So I think she needs to comment. All right,
no, but
thank you.
First giving you a chance from Maritzburg to speak.
I just want to say congratulations, Usha Bain. Our problem is that our ladies are prepared to educate themselves. But how many men do you see in our satsangs, in our meetings that contribute towards anything the women do? We have a significant problem where men don't come to lectures. Men don't come to educational discourses. And this is where we women are standing proud here in Maritzburg that we have more women than men to do our work for us. Thank you, Benji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. Let's move on. Aarti Ben, please go ahead.
I just want to say, Usha, brilliant presentation. Well researched. Thank you very much for that. And I just want to emphasize that, we had the Bhaiji who spoke just now about the golden age and the Kali Yuga and things like that. I've been reading recently, and Dr. Radhakrishnan emphasizes that if women are given the respect in their lives, also when they married, if they're given that respect, then they can command a lot, because when a woman marries, she's supposed to be the queen of a house. The saying in English goes that behind every successful man is a woman. Dr. Radhakrishnan says there's one word for that only in Hinduism. It's Sahadharmani. Sahadharmani means the woman who is with her husband no matter what. And it gives her an elevated position in her home as well. So I think it's all about civilization and culture. People now put civilization more before culture, and that's where we're losing it. We need to look at that as well. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Aarti. It was a good note on which to kind of bring this to an end. and to conclude on the topic, that if we look at the Vedic age, it actually had culture, and that culture actually fashioned civilization. Where we are today is where culture and the sanskar that gives you good values is missing. It's gone. And that's what we need to begin to build up again. So friends, in bringing this lecture to a close, I would like to invite everybody to the next lecture we're going to be having, which will be on the 19th of April. And it will be looking at the relevance of Swami Dayanand's teachings in our current crisis in the world. So Pandit Yuvesh Sundar would be doing that particular lecture, and it will be on the 19th of April. You are all invited to it. I'd like to thank everybody for attending, especially people who came from far and wide to join us in this virtual platform. Our Back to the Vedas lectures hopefully is interesting and exciting, and you would like to join us in future, please do tell all your friends about it, and as you're able to join us, please do so. Pandit Ati, can I please ask you to close with prayer?
Sure, thank you. Om Dhyav Shantirantariksham Shanti Prithivi Shantir Apa Shantir Oshadaya Shanti Vanaspatayah Shantir Vishwe Devah Shantir Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantir Eva Shanti Sama Shantir Iti Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste, everybody, and Shubhratri.
Shubhratri to you too. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me and for your comments. Thank you. Thank you.